Growing up in the Martinez household meant learning early that love came with conditions. My parents, Maria and Roberto, had this way of making everything feel like a competition between me and my younger sister Alina. She was the golden child, the one who got new clothes for every school event, the one whose report cards were hung on the refrigerator with pride, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. I was 15 when I first noticed how different they treated us. Alina had just turned 13, and Mom was planning this elaborate quinceañera party for her upcoming 15th birthday. 2 years in advance. Meanwhile, my own quinceañera had been a small gathering in our backyard with store-bought cake and decorations from the dollar store. I remember sitting on my bed that night, listening to Mom and Alina giggle as they looked through party planning magazines, and something cold settled in my chest. That was the moment I realized I was the expendable daughter. The family WhatsApp group started when I was 17. It was Mom's idea. Of course, she called it Martinez Family Updates and added everyone: my parents, Alina, my uncle Carlos and Aunt Sofia, my cousins Diego and Isabella, and my grandparents. At first it seemed harmless enough. Mom would share photos of family dinners. Alina would post selfies from her weekend outings with friends, and everyone would respond with heart emojis and supportive comments. But I quickly noticed a pattern. When Alina posted anything, a picture of her lunch, a video of her singing in the school choir, even just a random thought about her day, the group would explode with responses. Mom would comment about how talented and beautiful she was. Dad would add his proud papa emojis, and everyone else would chime in with their own praise. Alina was the star of our family's social media universe, and everyone orbited around her. When I shared something, the silence was deafening. I'd post a photo of a painting I'd worked on for weeks in my art class, and maybe 1 or 2 people would respond with a thumbs-up emoji. No comments, no enthusiasm, no real engagement. I'd share news about making honor roll or winning a local art competition, and the message would just sit there, ignored, until Alina posted something and suddenly everyone was active again. The worst part was watching them plan things without me. They'd organize family outings in the group chat, discussing times and locations. And I'd see all these messages flying back and forth. Then Alina would casually mention at dinner that they were going to the mall or the beach the next day, and I'd ask if I could come along. Mom would look at me like I was being unreasonable and say something like, "Well, we didn't think you'd be interested. You're always so busy with your homework and art projects." It wasn't that I was antisocial or difficult. I was just focused on my future in a way that my family couldn't understand. While Alina was out shopping and socializing, I was in my room studying for AP classes, working on my college applications, and developing my artistic skills. I had this burning desire to make something of myself, to prove that I was worth more than the scraps of attention they threw my way. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen, was the first adult who really saw my potential. She pulled me aside junior year and told me about scholarship opportunities for students with strong academic records and artistic talent. She helped me research colleges with excellent art programs and guided me through the application process. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone believed in me. The college application process was grueling. I spent months writing essays, perfecting my portfolio, and studying for standardized tests. My parents barely acknowledged what I was doing. When I asked Dad to help me with the financial aid forms, he acted like it was a huge inconvenience. Mom would make comments about how I was wasting my time, how college was expensive, and maybe I should just get a job after high school like she did. Meanwhile, Alina was still the center of attention. She'd started dating this boy from her class, and suddenly every family gathering was about her relationship drama. She'd share screenshots of their text conversations in the family group, and everyone would offer advice and support. When she had a fight with her friends, Mom would spend hours on the phone with her, helping her navigate the social dynamics of high school. I felt invisible in my own family. There were days when I'd come home from school and no one would even ask how my day was. Alina would walk in an hour later, and suddenly everyone wanted to hear about her classes, her friends, her plans for the weekend. I'd sit at the dinner table, eating quietly while they all focused on her stories. And I'd feel this hollow ache in my chest. The turning point came during my senior year. I'd been working with Mrs. Chen on this major scholarship application, a full ride to a prestigious art school on the East Coast. It was incredibly competitive, and I'd spent months preparing my submission. The portfolio alone took me 6 weeks to complete. I painted and drew until my fingers were stained with charcoal and my eyes burned from focusing on fine details. When I told my family about the scholarship, their reaction was predictably lukewarm. Dad just nodded and went back to watching TV. Mom said something about how I shouldn't get my hopes up, because those kinds of opportunities usually went to other types of students. Alina was more interested in showing everyone a new TikTok dance she'd learned than hearing about my college plans. But I didn't let their indifference discourage me. I'd gotten used to being my own cheerleader, my own source of motivation. One submitted my application on a cold February morning, and then I waited. The notification would come by email in April, and those 2 months felt like the longest of my life. During that waiting period, the family group chat dynamic got even worse. Alina had started talking about her own college plans. She was thinking about community college, maybe studying early childhood education. The family treated this like she was announcing her acceptance to Harvard. Mom started researching local programs. Dad talked about how proud he was of her for thinking about her future, and everyone else chimed in with their support and encouragement. I remember one particular evening when Alina posted in the group about visiting a community college campus. She shared a selfie from the student center with the caption, "Just toured my future school." The responses came flooding in immediately. Mom wrote about how beautiful and smart she looked. Dad posted multiple proud emojis, and my cousins started talking about how exciting it was that she was taking this step. I was sitting in my room, working on a final project for my AP literature class, when I saw all these messages. Something inside me just snapped. I grabbed my phone and typed out a response. "That's great, Alina. Good luck with your future." Then I put my phone away and tried to focus on my work. But I couldn't stop thinking about how different their reaction would be if I had shared the same news. The months leading up to graduation were a blur of final exams, senior activities, and college preparation. I'd been accepted to several schools, but I was still waiting to hear about the scholarship. My backup plan was to attend the state university with whatever financial aid I could get, but my heart was set on that art school. Alina's graduation party was being planned with the same enthusiasm as her quinceañera had been. Mom spent weeks organizing decorations, ordering custom cookies, and inviting extended family members. Meanwhile, my own graduation was treated like an afterthought. When I asked about having a party, Mom said we'd probably just have a small dinner at home. The inequality was so blatant that even I was shocked by it. Here I was, graduating as valedictorian with a 4.0 GPA, having been accepted to multiple colleges, and my family was treating it like a minor achievement. Alina was graduating with a 2.8 GPA, planning to attend community college, and they were throwing her a celebration that would rival a wedding. I started to withdraw from family activities entirely. When they'd plan outings without including me, I'd make my own plans. When they'd have their animated conversations at dinner, I'd eat quickly and retreat to my room. I was tired of fighting for scraps of attention and affection. I decided to focus on the people who actually valued me, my teachers, my art instructor, and the few close friends who understood what I was going through. Mrs. Chen became like a surrogate mother to me during this time. She'd check in on me regularly, celebrate my achievements, and remind me that my worth wasn't determined by my family's inability to see it. She helped me understand that some people are threatened by others' success, even within their own families, and that their reactions said more about them than it did about me. The scholarship notification was supposed to come in mid-April. I checked my email obsessively, refreshing my inbox every few minutes. When April 15th came and went without news, I started to worry. Maybe I hadn't been selected. Maybe all those months of work had been for nothing. Then, on a Tuesday morning in late April, I was getting ready for school when my phone buzzed with an email notification. My heart started racing as I saw the subject line, "Congratulations from the National Arts Foundation." My hands were shaking as I opened the message and read the first line. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a recipient of our full scholarship award." I had to read it 3 times before it sank in. Full scholarship. 4 years of tuition, room, and board, plus a stipend for art supplies. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. I ran downstairs to share the news with my family. They were all in the kitchen, Mom making breakfast, Dad reading the newspaper, Alina scrolling through her phone. I was practically vibrating with excitement as I announced that I'd received a full scholarship to one of the most prestigious art schools in the country. The response was exactly what I should have expected by then. Dad looked up from his paper, said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to reading. Mom asked if it was a real scholarship or one of those scam things she'd heard about. Alina didn't even look up from her phone. I stood there for a moment, holding my phone with the acceptance email open, and I felt something break inside me. This was the biggest achievement of my life, and they couldn't even muster fake enthusiasm. I realized in that moment that I would never be enough for them, no matter what I accomplished. I went back to my room and called Mrs. Chen. She screamed with joy when I told her the news, and we talked for 20 minutes about how incredible this opportunity was. She understood the magnitude of what I'd achieved, and her excitement helped fill some of the void left by my family's indifference. That evening, Alina posted in the family group chat about getting her driver's license. She'd failed the test twice before finally passing on her 3rd attempt. The group exploded with congratulations and praise. Mom posted about how proud she was. Dad shared a gif of a car with the caption, "Our little girl is growing up," and everyone else added their own celebratory messages. I watched this unfold on my phone, and I felt a familiar anger building in my chest. Here they were, celebrating Alina's 3rd attempt at passing a basic driving test, while completely ignoring my full scholarship to a prestigious university. The contrast was so stark, it almost seemed like a cruel joke. That night, I made a decision. I was going to share my news in the family group chat, but I was going to do it in a way that would make them confront their own behavior. I spent an hour crafting the perfect message, one that would celebrate my achievement while also highlighting their pattern of neglect. I took a screenshot of my acceptance email and opened the family group chat. Then I typed, "Since we're sharing good news today, I wanted to let everyone know that I received a full scholarship to the National Arts Institute. For years of tuition, room, board, and supplies completely covered. I'll be studying fine arts with a concentration in mixed media. This is something I've been working toward for years, and I'm incredibly grateful for this opportunity. I hope you can all find a moment to be proud of me the way you are of Alina for getting her license." I attached the screenshot of my acceptance email and hit send before I could second-guess myself. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched the chat for hours, waiting for someone to respond. I could see that people were reading the message. Those little blue check marks appeared next to everyone's names, but no one was saying anything. Finally, around 10 p.m., Mom sent a simple congratulations. No exclamation points, no emojis, no enthusiasm. Just a single word that felt more like an obligation than genuine happiness for my success. Dad never responded at all, neither did my uncle, aunt, or cousins. Alina eventually sent a thumbs-up emoji, but that was it. The contrast between their reaction to my life-changing scholarship and their cynical excitement over Alina's driver's license was so stark that even they seemed to realize how bad it looked. But I wasn't done. The next morning, I posted a photo of myself holding my acceptance letter with the caption, "Valedictorian." full scholarship recipient, and future artist. Sometimes you have to celebrate yourself when no one else will. I tagged the location as my high school and shared it on my Instagram story as well. Within hours, the post started getting attention from my classmates, teachers, and other people in my extended network. Comments poured in congratulating me, sharing their own stories of family dynamics, and praising me for standing up for myself. Mrs. Chen shared it on her own social media with a post about how proud she was of her student. The post started spreading beyond my immediate circle. Friends of friends began sharing it, and soon it was being reposted by people I didn't even know. The message seemed to resonate with a lot of people who had experienced similar family dynamics being overlooked, undervalued, or overshadowed by siblings who received more attention despite lesser achievements. Within 48 hours, my Instagram post had thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. People were sharing their own stories of family favoritism, celebrating their achievements that went unrecognized, and supporting each other in the comments. It had become something much bigger than just my personal experience. The attention was overwhelming, but also validating. Here were thousands of strangers celebrating my achievement in the way my own family couldn't. They understood the significance of what I'd accomplished, and they were proud of me for standing up for myself. Of course, the viral attention didn't go unnoticed by my family. Suddenly, people who had ignored my accomplishment were seeing it shared and celebrated by strangers across social media. My cousins started getting messages from their friends asking about the post. My aunt received comments from her coworkers who had seen it. The family group chat, which had been silent since my initial announcement, suddenly became active again. Uncle Carlos was the first to reach out, sending a private message apologizing for not responding sooner and congratulating me on my scholarship. He admitted that he'd been so focused on his own life that he hadn't fully processed the significance of my achievement. My cousin Isabella called me directly, apologizing for her silence and explaining that she'd been dealing with her own family issues. She said seeing my post had made her realize how often she'd witnessed my family's favoritism but hadn't said anything about it. She was proud of me for finally standing up for myself. But the most significant response came from my grandmother, Abuela Rosa. She called me on the third day after my post went viral, and I could hear the emotion in her voice. She told me she'd been seeing my post shared by people in her community. And she was both proud and ashamed, proud of my achievement and ashamed that her own family had failed to celebrate it properly. Abuela Rosa had always been more perceptive than the rest of my family. She'd noticed the way I was treated differently, but she'd never said anything directly. Now she was apologizing for not speaking up sooner and telling me how proud she was of the young woman I'd become. The conversation with my grandmother was healing in a way I hadn't expected. She told me stories about her own childhood, about being the overlooked daughter in a family that favored sons. She talked about how she'd vowed to treat all her grandchildren equally, but she admitted she'd failed to step in when she saw the inequality in how my parents treated Alina and me. My parents' reaction was more complicated. Mom was embarrassed by the attention and kept asking me to take down the post. She was worried about what people would think of our family, about how it made them look as parents. She couldn't understand that their behavior was the problem, not my decision to share my achievement. Dad was angry. He felt like I was airing our family's dirty laundry in public and making them look bad. He accused me of being attention-seeking and dramatic, completely missing the point that I'd simply wanted them to acknowledge my accomplishment. Elena's response was perhaps the most telling. She was jealous of the attention I was getting, but she was also starting to realize that maybe our family's dynamic wasn't as normal as she'd thought. She'd grown up as the favored child, so she'd never questioned why I seemed to be treated differently. Seeing the responses to my post from people who had experienced similar situations made her understand that favoritism wasn't just about different personalities or preferences, it was about inequality and emotional neglect. The viral attention continued for about a week. My post was shared by parenting bloggers who wrote about family dynamics, by college counselors who used it as an example of resilience, and by countless individuals who saw their own experiences reflected in my story. I received messages from people all over the world, sharing their own stories of family favoritism and celebrating their unrecognized achievements. The most meaningful messages came from other young women who had been overlooked in their families. They shared photos of their own accomplishments, graduations, job promotions, artistic achievements, athletic victories that had gone uncelebrated by their families. We created an informal support network, cheering each other on and validating each other's experiences. Some people criticized me for publicly calling out my family. They said I should have handled it privately, that family business should stay within the family. But I'd tried the private approach for years, and it had gotten me nowhere. Sometimes you have to make noise to be heard. And sometimes you have to seek validation from outside sources when your own family refuses to provide it. The scholarship and the viral post changed everything about my family dynamics. My parents were forced to confront their behavior in a way they'd never had to before. When friends and neighbors started asking about my achievement, they had to acknowledge it publicly, even if they couldn't do so privately. Alina and I had several long conversations during this time. She was processing her own role in the family dynamic and realizing that while she'd been the beneficiary of favoritism, it hadn't necessarily been healthy for her either. She'd grown up without having to work hard for attention or validation, and she was starting to understand that this might have done her a disservice in the long run. We talked about specific incidents over the years, times when I'd been excluded from family activities, when my achievements had been minimized, when her smaller accomplishments had been celebrated more than my larger ones. For the first time, Alina was seeing these patterns clearly, and she was horrified by what she realized. The most important change was in how I saw myself. For years, I'd internalized my family's treatment of me as evidence that I wasn't worthy of love and attention. I'd worked harder and achieved more, partly because I was trying to earn their approval. But the response to my post showed me that the problem wasn't with me, it was with them. Thousands of strangers had looked at my achievement and immediately recognized its significance. They'd celebrated my success without hesitation, without conditions, without comparison to someone else's accomplishments. They'd seen my worth in a way my own family couldn't, and that was incredibly powerful. I started therapy that summer. Before leaving for college, I wanted to process everything that had happened and develop healthy coping mechanisms for dealing with my family in the future. My therapist helped me understand that family favoritism is a form of emotional abuse, and that my feelings of hurt and anger were completely valid. She also helped me recognize the strength I'd developed as a result of being overlooked. I'd learned to be self-reliant, to motivate myself, to find validation from within rather than always seeking it from others. These were valuable skills that would serve me well in college and beyond. The scholarship ceremony was held in June, right after graduation. I was one of 20 students selected from across the country, and my family was invited to attend. Mrs. Chen came as my guest, and she was more excited than anyone else there. She took dozens of photos and posted them on her social media, celebrating her students' achievement. My parents attended the ceremony, but their discomfort was obvious. They sat in the back row and left immediately after the presentation. They couldn't even stay for the reception, where I was supposed to mingle with other scholarship recipients and their families. I was disappointed but not surprised by their behavior. Alina, surprisingly, stayed for the entire event. She talked to other families, asked questions about the scholarship program, and seemed genuinely interested in learning more about my future plans. It was the first time she'd shown real curiosity about my life and goals. After the ceremony, she pulled me aside and apologized. She said she'd been thinking a lot about our family dynamics, and she realized how unfairly I'd been treated. She promised to do better in the future, to speak up when she saw favoritism happening, and to celebrate my achievements the way a sister should. I appreciated her apology, but I also knew that changing family patterns would take time and consistent effort. Alina had good intentions, but she'd also grown up in a system that benefited her. It would be challenging for her to consistently challenge that system, especially when it might mean receiving less attention herself. The summer before college was bittersweet. I was excited about my future, but also sad about leaving behind the familiar. Even if the familiar hadn't been particularly nurturing. I spent time with friends, worked on my art, and tried to repair some of the damage in my family relationships. My relationship with my parents remained strained. They still couldn't understand why I'd made our family issues public, and they continued to minimize my concerns about favoritism. They saw my actions as disrespectful, rather than as a cry for recognition and love. But other relationships in my family began to heal. My uncle Carlos made an effort to stay in touch and ask about my college preparations. My cousin Isabella started sharing my posts on social media and commenting subtly. My grandmother called me weekly to check in and offer encouragement. The most significant change was in how I approached family gatherings. Instead of trying to compete for attention or feeling hurt by their indifference, I started focusing on the people who did appreciate me. I'd spend time with Abuela Rosa, have meaningful conversations with the cousins who'd reached out, and limit my interactions with the family members who continued to treat me poorly. I also started setting boundaries. When my parents would make dismissive comments about my college plans or my scholarship, I'd call them out directly. I'd say something like, "That comment is hurtful and unsupportive, and I won't tolerate it. If you can't be proud of my achievements, at least don't actively undermine them." This approach was uncomfortable at first, but it was necessary. I'd spent years accepting poor treatment because I wanted to maintain family harmony. But I realized that harmony built on inequality and neglect wasn't worth preserving. Real family relationships should be built on mutual respect and genuine care. The response to my viral post continued to impact my life in positive ways. I received scholarship offers from other schools, internship opportunities from art organizations, and mentorship offers from successful artists who had seen my story. The attention had opened doors I hadn't even known existed. More importantly, I'd connected with a community of people who understood my experience. Some of them became genuine friends, and we continued to support each other through our individual journeys. We shared college updates, celebrated each other's successes, and provided encouragement during difficult times. As my departure date approached, I felt a mix of emotions. I was excited about starting fresh, in a new place where I could define myself on my own terms. I was nervous about being so far from home, even if home hadn't always been supportive, and I was hopeful that this new chapter would help me continue healing from the wounds of family favoritism. My parents threw a small going-away dinner for me, but it felt obligatory rather than celebratory. They invited extended family members who had seen my viral post, and I could tell they were putting on a performance of being proud parents. It was better than nothing, but it felt hollow compared to the genuine excitement I'd received from strangers on the internet. Alina, however, had prepared a surprise for me. She'd been working on a photo album documenting our childhood, but she'd focused on moments that showed my achievements and talents. She'd included photos of my art projects, certificates from academic competitions, and pictures of me at various school events. It was the first time she'd truly acknowledged my accomplishments, and it meant more to me than any of the attention from my viral post. As I packed my belongings for college, I reflected on how much had changed since that morning in April when I'd received my scholarship notification. I'd gone from being an overlooked daughter to someone whose story had inspired thousands of people. I'd learned to advocate for myself and to recognize my own worth, regardless of how others treated me. The viral post had been a turning point, but it wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter where I would define success on my own terms, build relationships with people who valued me, and create art that reflected my authentic experience. I was no longer waiting for my family's approval to feel worthy of love and recognition. Looking back now, I can see that my family's favoritism, while painful, had also given me gifts. It had made me resilient, independent, and empathetic to others who felt overlooked. It had driven me to achieve more than I might have otherwise. And it had taught me the importance of celebrating others' successes, even when they're not celebrated myself. The scholarship that started it all became just the first of many achievements I would earn through my own hard work and determination. But more importantly, it marked the moment when I stopped seeking validation from people who were incapable of giving it and started finding it within myself and from those who truly understood my worth. My story resonated with so many people because family favoritism is more common than we like to admit. There are countless children growing up in homes where love feels conditional, where achievements are minimized, where siblings are treated as competitors rather than allies. My viral post gave voice to their experiences and reminded them that their worth isn't determined by their family's inability to see it. The message I sent to my family group chat that day was more than just sharing good news. It was a declaration of independence. It was me saying that I wouldn't accept their scraps of attention anymore, that I deserved to be celebrated for my achievements, and that I was strong enough to advocate for myself even when it made them uncomfortable. Sometimes the most radical act is simply insisting on your own worth. Sometimes you have to make noise to be heard. And sometimes you have to seek validation from strangers when your own family refuses to provide it. I'm grateful that I found the courage to do all of these things. And I'm proud of the young woman who stood up for herself when no one else would.